morning and welcome. This is Sunrise Daily. It's Wednesday morning. Just to be clear, it's a Wednesday morning. I'm Ayo Makide. Now, just a quick question. What's the fuel situation like where you are? Here's an update we picked up lately.
It's week 4 of the continuing fuel scarcity, and what was an already difficult situation may have become worse for motorists, as most petrol stations visited either do not have the product for sale or have it in stock, but for some reason are making motorists wait in long queues, spilling into the expressway. It appears to have become a desperate situation, causing tempers to flare, especially here at the Forte oil filling station along Ikorodu Road, where Channel's television crew was threatened by touts and shown the exit door. At other stations where the product is available, motorists wait endlessly in long queues where petrol attendants allegedly indulge in sharp practices.
Maybe another cars that just come now, maybe they'll tip them with, let me, 500 or 1,000. They will allow them to enter. And we that we are even on the queue, they don't even allow us.
Yesterday evening they offload 2 tankers here. So they do it purposely, they don't want to sell fuel, for my own observation.
Buyers seeking to fill their jerry cans for home or business purposes have similar tales of woe to share.
So I've been here since like 30 minutes. Although there they sell fuel per litre 165, but they collect 500 naira for keg. Then they sell here 190, then they collect 200 naira per keg.
Their revelations about the price per litre imply that the price displayed on the fuel pump is only a mere formality. In Ibadan, the Oyo State capital, the fuel scarcity has worsened as independent marketers sell fuel as high as 280 naira per litre. The product is in particularly short supply, as the fuel filling stations selling at the official pump price have monstrous queues to deal with. Motorists here say they have spent nearly half the day on the queue, while traffic congestion has become a common sight in areas where fuel is being sold.
This is what we do every morning. You come here very early in the morning, like 6, 7, or after you drop the kids off at school.
And what is the time now?
This is 5 minutes to 3. I've been to Bovas. I was there for like an hour. It's crazy. People are fighting. It's not moving. I left there. I went to Erano. They said they are out of fuel. So I come back here.
In Abeokuta, the Ogun State capital, many petrol stations are under lock and key, while those selling have a crowd of frustrated buyers to contend with. Citizens are calling on the relevant authorities to do the needful to ameliorate the situation.
But as you can see, the way people are here for hours struggling to get fuel, which is not good. So I think that our government should think of what to do so that to stop all this menace.
And motorists in Dutse, the Jigawa state capital, lament the continuing fuel scarcity as they join long queues at filling stations to refill their tanks. Some say the long hours spent on the queue is preventing them from other activities. Others have resorted to buying from black market merchants who sell at exorbitant prices. It's an ironical situation in Cross River State as the pump price of fuel remains the same and filling stations are not so congested. And as the fuel scarcity bites harder, the NNPC is yet to make good its promise of importing additional 2.3 billion litres of petrol to complement the existing 1 billion litres as part of measures to address the situation.
Do me one favor. That's the update we have been able to pick up. Just do me a favor. There is the email address right on your screen. Let's know what your experience is, or, even if it's on Twitter, you can tweet at us. Let us know what the situation is in your own area. Wherever you are, what has been your experience? How easy is it for you to get fuel? Why are we hammering on this now? Because at least we've been trying to get, word from the authorities, whichever one it is, to let us know exactly what is happening. Why do we still have this seriously hard-biting fuel scarcity everywhere in Nigeria? We had thought it was just the major cities, but as you can see, it's not so easy to get fuel anywhere else. So What has been your own experience? And we're still waiting on the authorities to at least reach out to us. We have reached out. We're hoping to get some feedback from the authorities to let us know, okay, these are the things. These are the reasons why we're still having this. The last we heard, we were told, I mean, that was about a week or two ago, we have 1 billion liters somewhere, and that we need to, we're still bringing in another 2 billion plus liters of fuel. But the experiences of people that we have spoken to, that you have heard, that you have seen on your screen, tell you otherwise. Well, maybe we are making these things up. Let us know what your own experiences have been so far in getting this done. Because at the end of the day, I mean, we talked about this yesterday, without energy, there is literally nothing that moves. Just one of the papers yesterday, or was it the day before yesterday, was talking about Nigerians spending 17 trillion naira on fuel or energy in 1 year, in the year 2021 alone. Just imagine how much we would save ourselves, how helpful it would be for us. We're talking about small businesses not being able to do business. We're talking about homes not being able to meet their own needs because they have to ensure that certain things are done. Without electricity, children cannot do their homework, and of course, it'll affect their academic performance. How about healthcare service provision for hospitals who have to charge a lot more than they would ordinarily if fuel supply was something that was regular to them? I hope, I don't know what perspective it will be for women, and I'm sure that my colleague Mark will want to speak to that in a bit. But at the end of the day, everyone is affected by this one way or another. So the authorities, we need to know exactly what is happening. Let someone speak to us. Let someone speak to Nigerians. Let someone let us know exactly what the issues are. At the end of the day, it is our lives at stake. Even the lives of the authorities, because I am pretty sure that they have dependents as well. The authorities have dependents who may not be as privileged as they are where they are right now. So please, let someone speak to us. Is the NNPC that's supposed to speak to us? Is it the Federal Minister of State for Petroleum that is supposed to speak to Nigerians? We have heard promises of billions of liters of fuel somewhere. We hear that, there is some supply coming in for vessels to berth with 120.35 million liters of petrol this week. This week, what happened to the promises of last week? How come those things didn't happen as we expected them to happen? Do we recognize how many people might lose their jobs? How many things in the supply chain all across the nation might be affected simply because people cannot get fuel supply for themselves? Questions begging answers. I'm pretty sure some of the dailies will reflect some of these things. So let's begin with the Vanguard newspaper that actually speaks to it. And this is the way Vanguard newspaper puts its front page this morning. Fuel scarcity chokes. Oh, it definitely does. Fuel scarcity chokes. Lagos, Abuja, Enugu, others. That's the lead of the Vanguard newspaper this morning. And check out what the writers are saying. FG says 45 million liters of product successfully blended. What does that mean? The details you'll find on the inside pages. Will not lift PMS for depot owners selling above 148 naira 77 kobo. That is ascribed to Newbank. Is that part of the reasons why people are having difficulty getting fuel? Begins enforcement of official rate, sets up task force. Find the details of these and several others on page 5 of the Vanguard newspaper this morning. That's the lead story of the paper this morning. Several other issues. Senate House of Reps reject VAT on exclusive lists. Story is on page 8. That's of course part of the constitution review that is going on, and several other issues begging for answers on the front page of the Vanguard newspaper this morning. Good morning, Mark.
Well, let's take a look. Good morning, Ayo, and let's take a look at leadership newspapers this morning. Quite a lot to, digest yesterday. It was a very sad day for women across the length and breadth of this country yesterday, and it was highly significant that yesterday marks the start of what I'd like to term the Women's Month. A lot of things happen this month. We have International Women's Day on the 8th of March. And so many Mothers' Sundays are celebrated in this particular month of March. And to look at all of the clauses concerning women in the National Assembly, not even the one that has to do with indigenship, where women can take up the indigenship of the state of their husbands, sail through. A real shame, a crying shame, as a matter of fact. Let's look at leadership newspapers this morning, and it has this Constitution Review. President, governors may go to jail for rejecting legislative summons. That's the lead story on the front page of leadership this morning. NASS passes bill, rejects special seats for women. Votes against moving VAT to exclusive list. Approves financial autonomy for state legislature, judiciary, local governments. Rejects pension for presiding officers of legislature. Diaspora voting. Mayoral status for Abuja. NLC mobilizes states for local government autonomy approval. That's also on the front page of the paper. It's a page 4 read for you there. Look at all the stories on the front page. Convention, fresh crisis hits APC over imposition of candidates. That's on page 7. We heard the governor of Kebbi State saying that they're still going with the March 26th date. We'll see how things eventually move. Alafin, 2023, Alafin Oni moved to reconcile Aregbesola Tinubu. That's a story to the picture you see on the front page there. And look at this. 5 days after assent, PMB 6 amendment to Electoral Act. Page 6 has all the details. Oil prices back to $105 per barrel on Russia-Ukraine crisis. On page 25 of the paper. Let's leave it there for the daily.
The Nigerian Tribune also has a story on Constitution Review, and that's what you have on the front page. Senate reps support independent candidacy, devolution of powers. All the details of that you want to find on the inside pages this morning. Look at the riders. Reject immunity, life pension for presiding officers, diaspora voting. Move airports, railway, correctional service from exclusive list to concurrent list. How about we do, okay, so correctional service is now on the concurrent list. How about we move police accordingly? But I don't know. 45 clauses scale through both chambers to be transmitted to state assemblies. Senate passes 47 clauses. Reps pass 56 clauses. Lawmakers reject women-related bills. Senate approves financial autonomy for local councils, state legislature, judiciary. Hopefully we'll get some more perspectives, Markwell, on this issue, especially concerning women-related bills. But I would say, I mean, maybe when the census is done with, we will know how many women versus how many men we have in Nigeria, and how that, you know, can be governed, how women can galvanize that power so that they take the dominance in the parties, and then they'll be able to get this done. But I don't know. That's just off the top of my head, because it will seem like advocacy hasn't done the magic. And that is really, really sad indeed, as you have said. Well, if you want a list of voting, the bills that have been passed, 25 of them on the front page of the Nigerian Tribune this morning, the ones that passed at the reps, the ones that failed at the House of Reps, all of that you will find on page 8 of the Nigerian Tribune this morning. Let's leave it there for the paper.
Guardian has on the front page, Buhari leaves for Nairobi, London as fuel scarcity bites harder nationwide. That's what the Guardian has on the front page for you this morning. Kaduna, Ilorin motorists sleep at filling stations. Marketers deny blending of adulterated petrol, say product yet to be evacuated. Will not lift PMS for depot owners selling above 148 naira 77 kobo, says Nupeng. NMDPRA, NNPC deploys security agencies to check petrol diversion. Ex-depot price now 185 naira. So it looks like this price increase is upon us anyway. 185 naira. If you're lifting from the depots at 185, how much are you expected to sell at the filling stations? Is 165 still a feasible amount? If it isn't, can they just be honest and let us know what is going on truly? Because what has happened is that officials do not want to speak to journalists and address the situation and let us be able to give information to Nigerians. I don't know if anyone enjoys this hardship continuing. But page 2 might give you insight into this story. National Assembly votes for devolution of power, council autonomy. It's on page 2. Northern elders back Igbo presidency is also on the front page this morning. A number of stories beneath the nameplate this morning. Some will actually make you very sad. Look at this. 12 people burnt to death in Kano auto crash. That's very sad. And then you also see this disquiet in APC over Adamu Namani as governors allay fears on convention and rift. Let's leave it there for The Guardian.
Hope one day Marpa will be able to know why these things seem to happen almost incessantly when people are killed or die because of things that one would say are preventable. Very, very sad indeed, no doubt. Nigerian NewsDirect on the front page this morning is also interested in the constitutional review process, and this is the lead on the front page. NASS approves financial autonomy for LGC, the local government councils, state legislature and judiciary. Find out the meaning of that on page 3 of the paper. Rejects pension for presiding officers, others. And this one, rejection of bill on VAT, welcome development. That's according to Moda. Find out what that is about. Is it rejection of bill on VAT? What does it mean? Check the details on the inside pages this morning of the paper. Well, Malcolm, this might cheer you up. Sanwo-Olu is promising will deliberately push more developments to Badagry. What does that mean? You want to find out the details on page 2. It's at least good to note that Badagry is an international route, or should I say town, and consequently definitely it requires the kind of thing that the governor of the state is talking about. But more details of that you'll find on page 2 this morning. That's the Nigerian NewsDirect.
Well, tell the governor we certainly will be holding him to his promise. That you can bet. And yes, it is cheery news indeed to know that that backwater city or backwater town is going to be getting the attention it rightly deserves. It's not a question of, it's not a favor. If Nigeria and Lagos remembers Badagry, it's not a favor. We actually do ourselves a whole world of good because a lot of potential rests in that little town, that little sleepy town that seems to have been cut off from the city of Lagos by lack of access roads. But let's look at this now. Daily Trust is what is on the front page now. National Assembly stops state local government joint account, rejects slots for women, opposes pension, immunity for presiding officers, approves financial autonomy for state legislatures, judiciary, Senate reps differ on mayoralty for FCT virtual court proceedings. I was a little sad on that. A lot of things, well, maybe there are some things to chair in this, and I don't want to give opinion, but just looking at what happened to women, and I'm glad that Daily Trust has put it in the lead headline there. It's not a rider. A lot of things made me sad as a resident of the FCT and also as a woman. But Ayo, thanks for trying to cheer me up. How National Assembly voted on amendment of the 1999 Constitution. You have details on the front page. Another thing is how they conducted it, so that you know where each legislature stood on some of the issues that were voted on yesterday. It was required that they sit in their seats and they had to use cards, and the vote was coming in and it was easy to see. So some of the questions we'll be posing is how our lawmakers voted, and I think that women should remember that. It's not all of them who voted against it. There'll be questions to ask as to where did you stand when these issues were raised for women. I think women should ask those kind of questions. APC, Buhari rejects moves to drop Adamu as consensus national chair, is on page 14. And 2023, Kwankwan sought to dump PDP for NNPP contest presidency. Looks like that will be no surprise. Buhari for 2-week medical checkup in London. And that was already captured as well. Alaafin Oni moved to reconcile Tinubu Aregbesola on page 14 of Daily Trust. Let's leave it there for the paper.
Question someone might sneakily ask you is, are they quarreling? The Daily Times newspaper this morning is interested in the strike, and that's it. FG working to address ASUU's demands. Find the details of that on the front page of the paper this morning. That's according to Ngige, the Minister of Labour and Employment. Says over 92 billion naira paid so far as part of implementation of agreement reached with the union in December 2020. TUC threatens to embark on industrial action, condemns education minister's walkout on NASS. That is definitely something a little worrying and due for attention. Above the nameplate, Buhari urges Nigerians to collaborate with security agencies, says more could be achieved in bringing law and order to various parts of Nigeria with full cooperation of citizens. I hope the president has also been informed that there have been cases where citizens in the different localities give information to security agencies, and there was retaliatory attack by these bandits, or whatever word you want to use. Okay, terrorists. Yes, that's the word. They gave information to security agencies, and these terrorists went back and attacked them for doing just that. I hope that's been factored in as well, and that there will be protection for the people. That's the Daily Times this morning.
And if we're to look at New Telegraph, you'll see this. APC National Chair Buhari meets APC governors, insists on Adamu. CECPC Chair Buni, 10 other governors absent at the meeting. Southeast lobbies for National Secretary slot. March 26 convention date sacrosanct. That's from party governors. So you find all the details on page 4 of the paper. It's all about politics on the front page here. Russia-Ukraine war, many Nigerian students stranded at border posts. Is there something we can do about that? Because that's what we're beginning to hear more and more, that our students will get there and they're told to go back, or they're unable to make their way through. Is there anything that Nigeria can do to help our students who finally are able to make it to the border? These are some of the questions we need to ask. Diaspora Students' Union send SOS to federal government. Protracted sanctions to impact Nigeria's subsidy bill. 4.8 billion naira COVID-19 vaccines imported from Moscow in Q4 of 2021. And you also see this focus on the National Assembly's Constitution Amendment. NASS okays financial autonomy for local governments, judiciary, others. Rejects pension for presiding officers, special seats for women. Senate removes railway, airport, power, VAT from exclusive list. Passes bill to empower NASS state assemblies to summon president governors on security. Pages 3, 8, and 26 have details for you. You know, sometimes you bail the cat. Are they really able to make it walk? That's a question you have to ask them. But at least it's a step, some people will argue. Pages 3, 8, and 26, again, will give you details. PMS, 4 vessels to berth with 120.35 million liters this week. Lagos Delta to receive products. We won't lift PMS for depot owners selling above 148 naira 77 kobo. That's from Nupeng. And look at this. Oil prices at a price we've not seen in a long time. Oil price rises above $105 ahead of OPEC Plus meeting. The sad part is that Nigeria isn't benefiting from that because we spend almost all of the profits on subsidies. But let's leave it there for New Telegraph.
Well, it's definitely something very troubling, and I hope, I sincerely hope, Markwe, that the authorities are listening to all of these. How come we're not cheering when there is a boom? Concerns? Something to worry about? That's the papers this morning. We're back to take on some of the issues raised already, and that will certainly interest you. Stay with us.
Have you ever heard the phrase delusions of grandeur?
Weeks and months of public engagements and campaigns by female lawmakers and civil society organizations for the women-related constitutional amendment bills before the National Assembly, as well as the visit of the wife of the president, Mrs. Aisha Buhari, last week when the constitutional amendment bills were laid, all come down to this day. Lawmakers commenced voting for 68 constitutional amendment bills, 4 of which are related to women. In the Senate, the first bill to create special seats for women in the National and State Houses of Assembly suffers an instant defeat.
This bill has failed, and I reluctantly say so.
3 other women-related bills suffer the same fate in the upper chamber.
Based on the information reaching me,
in the House of Representatives, a motion is moved to admit the wife of the Vice President, Mrs. Dolakbo Osinbajo, but chants of no rent the air. The motion is put to vote and Mrs. Osinbajo is ushered in. 208 members out of 290 present vote against the bill to create special seats for women in the National and State Houses of Assembly. Then it's time to vote for a bill to provide for 35% affirmative action for women in political party administration. Sensing the voting pattern, a lawmaker and the speaker appeal to members for at least a reduction in their allocation to no avail.
We may be able to reach a form of a consensus on this floor on the need to ensure greater participation for our women folk without necessarily discriminating against the men folk by reducing the percentage proposed in this clause from 35 to 15.
They come out en masse to vote for you and I. You cannot now be seen working against their interests. This particular provision on party administration, I will publish this vote.
Another to allow women take up indigenship of their husband's state also suffers the same fate. After sitting through the sad turn of events, a disappointed wife of the Vice President, Mrs. Dolakbo Osinbajo, takes her leave.
The demand was because we have capacity. We don't believe it is a favor. We know we have the capacity. And we know this isn't the end of the story.
The Minister of Women Affairs and other female lawmakers are also disappointed.
What has happened has taken us years back. However, this is a time for women to sit back, unite, and be one.
I do not want to believe that even people who co-sponsored the bill came out this morning to vote against what they are part of sponsoring.
There are policies that affect only women, and it only pinches those of us that pinches that can know how to address such issues.
In a last-ditch move, the Speaker gives special consideration to a bill to provide for a minimum of 20% for women in ministerial and commissioner nominees.
The system is down, and I'm going to put the questions. Those in favor of the 20% for women, say aye. Those against, please say nay. Clearly, 230s, the ayes have it. 20% for women.
This turns out to be a fruitless move as the bill was rejected by the Senate. Female lawmakers are furious, disappointed with the turn of events and in their male colleagues. In the coming days, the reactions from the civil society organizations will not be mild, considering how much work was put into ensuring that these female-related bills are passed by the National Assembly. Terry Ikumi, Channels Television News.
Those are some of the issues we'll be looking at this morning. We have with us, joining us via Zoom, Yemi Candidate Johnson, who is a senior advocate of Nigeria. You're welcome to the program, sir. Joining us via Zoom, Yemi Candidate Johnson, who is a senior advocate of Nigeria. You're welcome to the program, sir. Joining us via... And we also have two wonderful guests here in our studio. Well, we'll decide if one of them is wonderful after we pose the question to him. But I know that I have one wonderful, at least, confirmed here. Dr. Abiola Akiode Afolabi, who is the convener, feminist Womanifesto, interesting name there, is right here in the studio. And we also have with us Honorable Ben Ibakba, who is a member representing Ethiopia Federal Constituency. You're both welcome to our studios this morning.
Yeah, it's a pleasure.
Thank you. Well, let me start with you, Honorable, and for obvious reasons, in terms of how, I'll come to my other guests later, but I would like to first of all ask, with regards to the bills that had to do with women, and it's a priority, it's only obvious that I'll ask that first. Where did you vote?
Well, I voted in line with my conscience. I believe that we should be thinking about inclusion and women. I voted for women, but definitely I wouldn't.
On all 4 bills?
There's no way I can vote on all 4 bills for women.
Yes, so which ones did you vote yes for?
I voted for party leadership, the affirmation for party leadership. I voted for appointments, commissioners.
That was much later. That was a face-saving bill, which was passed at the very end. The 4 critical bills that have to do with affirmation, that have to do with indigenship, that have to do with special seats.
Indigenship, yes, I voted because as an individual, I hold an American citizenship. I mean, residency. I think if they open their borders and our doors for us, we should open ours for other people who are coming with the right intention.
Other people?
So,
they're your wives?
No, see, it's not just about the wives. The wives, fine, but there are people that will come and they contribute meaningfully to our economy, and so they should be encouraged. So I voted that too. The only one that I didn't vote for is on the special seats. Because because these we agreed that they are going to be published. So we voted based on our conscience. You're talking about, I didn't vote for that one because it kind of offends Section 42 of the Constitution, which talk about discrimination. Women have never said that they are lesser human beings. So they should be allowed to contest. They contest with us. So why should you give about 100 and something slot free of charge when the women will still contest with men in the existing seats? So that, in my own conviction, there was no need to do that. Because if we say that Section 42 of our Constitution talk about discrimination, it should be total.
Okay, so for you it was about fairness.
Yes.
But let me quickly go to my guest via Zoom now. I do not know how well you monitored the events of yesterday. On many platforms, they were broadcast live, and people were watching what was going on. I think it was just the Senate who had a bit of a hiccup initially in terms of carrying out their activities live, but eventually they were able to get their live streaming up. For you, if you monitored the events of the day, what was your assessment in terms of how the voting went? First, the 68 bills which were presented for amendment, whether you thought there were critical issues amongst them, and how the House and the Senate eventually moved, for yes or no, or aye or nay, as they usually say, on those issues.
Good morning. Thank you very much. First impression, of course, is that the volume of amendments being dealt with was quite high, and it's not surprising, therefore, that the process was rowdy and sometimes difficult to follow. For sure, there are many critical items which were amongst those being considered, and the one that you've discussed a few minutes before, that of equality, people refer to it, I think, as gender diversity or women's rights or whatever. That is often a cultural perspective, but it's basically a question of equality of Nigerians under the Constitution. I think that was the most critical, and more so when we are 4 or 5 days away from International Women's Day. It's a matter which I think was handled quite unsatisfactorily. And I think that at the bottom, it's clear to me that the members of the National Assembly do not believe that all Nigerians are equal.
It does say a lot, and we'll come to that shortly, because there will be a little more perspective on that. But thank you for at least putting some perspective on that. But I would like to look at a few of the other bills which they had to vote on, some of them concerning the judiciary directly, which is where you operate as well. Look, autonomy for the judiciary, separating the office of the Attorney General of the Federation from that of the Chief Justice, beg your pardon, from that of the office of the Minister of Justice. Thank you very much for that. These are some of the considerations we saw sailing through yesterday. Also voting that the president should be able to give a State of the Nation address from time to time. Do you think that for you, do some of these bills, some of these clauses which were up for consideration, fundamental enough to make the sort of shift which you're looking to see in our Constitution?
The short answer is no. First of all, one of the weaknesses of our Constitution is the excessive number of national, local, and regional issues which it seeks to regulate in a micro manner. A Constitution is a fundamental law. It's meant to reflect the values, the fundamental idea upon which a society is organized and the things in which it believes. That's the purpose of a Constitution. This delving into very minute detail in a Constitution as to how you create offices, as to many of the issues that they delved into, and you could see the confusion and chaos to a large extent on the floor of both houses yesterday. It's too much work being put into the Constitution. People consistently refer to a Constitution as a fundamental law. What does it say about who we are as a people? What do we believe? You can leave the micro aspects to succeeding legislatures, but the fundamental problem is that our Constitution does not express an overarching idea about what Nigerians believe about themselves, their political society, and how to organize it.
It does say a lot. So from what I get, and you could correct me if I'm wrong about your perspective, how do you rate generally the exercise of constitution amendment? Did you think it was necessary?
Well, we have a constitutional amendment is necessary because political society evolves. The people who draft a constitution cannot foresee every single aspect of the development of that political society, and so therefore it's natural for the mechanisms within it to adjust and to meet new situations to be activated from time to time. A big problem with our constitution is that it does not reflect any values across all society. You know, I keep referring to fundamental ideas. This is very important because if you agree about a fundamental idea upon which your society is organized, then it's easy for you within that context to attend to smaller issues as you go along. And if you find you haven't addressed something which comes up, then you can focus on it within the context of your own political theory. I don't want to sound academic, but the fact is that you have to have an idea about what you're doing and what is its purpose before you're able to reflect on how you want to evolve it. So this is the challenge that we face here. I think that you will find with all these disparate and confusing series of amendments that what we're saying is two things. One is that we recognize fundamental inadequacies in our constitution. And secondly, that we have not formulated an idea for ourselves as to how to progress from here. This is why you find when you bring 82 amendments, it's very difficult to debate them and to extract an idea about what you want to do. So it's basically potluck. You know, some guy, respectfully, with respect to the honorable member who's on your panel, he says, speaking about the matter of women, he votes for one thing, he doesn't vote for the other. Basically, if the idea is rational and it is based on fundamental ideas, it's difficult for you to chop and change as to these things that you're doing. So I think that the confusion that you will find on the floor and amongst many members of our legislature is that they don't understand the purpose of the Constitution. They don't understand what values the country represents and what we're trying to present to the world. And they don't understand the basic rights of every human being who lives in Nigeria.
Okay, pretty strong there. But let me come to you because, I mean, basic rights, I'm sure that you certainly will be picking a line from there. My colleague Terry did say that he expects in the coming days that women CSOs will certainly be up in arms with what has happened in the National Assembly. How did you see it coming?
Well, we wouldn't say no because we know that we're in a society that is highly patriarchal. So what we did was to try to make attempts to ensure that we reach as many people as possible. To the extent that we had the UN Women supported gender experts on the Joint Committee of NASS, on the National Assembly Committee on Constitutional Review, as a way of ensuring that the critical areas relating to women, will be discussed at that level so that they can also understand some of the nuances, around issues of gender equality. We also had a meeting with the Conference of Speakers. So we've been on this for like about 1 year, trying to follow up one way or the other. I recall that PLAC also did a lot of research to even explain the rationale behind the 111 seats and all of that. Now, in other countries, they were talking about 35% affirmative action. But the National Assembly settled for 101 seats, which is not up to that request for 35% affirmative action. After a whole lot of negotiation, we cannot give you 35% because it's a lot. Then, so let's do 101 seats, which will not in any way threaten the current structure. So it's just going to be extra, specific seats. And the argument was also made at a point in time when they were asking, we said, can they delineate new senatorial districts so that those senatorial districts can represent that seat? They said, oh, no, they don't want that, So we then said, okay, but in other countries, like Tanzania, they have the women constituency seat. So these are people who are sitting in the National Assembly, to represent women, youths, people with disability constituency. So that will not threaten the existing senatorial. So my point is that there were a lot of negotiation made, before we even arrived at 101 seats. So getting to that, and also we had someone like the Speaker of the House of Rep co-sponsoring, for the first time, about 119 people, and then, so I was shocked when the vote came and it was, less than
I remember speaking,
that number.
I remember listening to Honorable Onye Jiocha, who was, I think, one of the, was the arrowhead of this particular bill. The optimism which she expressed was almost infectious. She was almost cocksure because of the number of sponsors, co-sponsors she had on that bill. Yeah, that it was good. It was as good as done.
And also the extent of engagement.
But do you think that this is a matter of framing? Because, I mean, listening to Mr. Candidate Johnson now, he has said that this is a matter of equality. As our Constitution, already recognizes, and this is about putting it out there, that this is what we as a people believe in, that men and women are equal before the law, before God and perhaps before the law. Maybe some people don't believe that in their religions, but I do know that religions do preach equality, and that's the basis of, all rights. Black Lives Matter, yes. Racism and discrimination, etc., etc. But do we understand that this also falls under that category? Have we been able to frame it right in that line, that people understand that this is a matter of equality before the law and in the eyes of the country?
Well, it's well framed, and when people argue, I'm a lawyer myself and I teach constitutional law. When you argue about Section 42 of the Constitution that deals with non-discrimination, if you read Section 42, which Section 17, that talks about equality, we can't take, some part of the Constitution and read it, to our own understanding. Now, even if you take Section 42 as it is, Section 42(1) talks about non-discrimination. 42, subsection 2, follows suit. But Section 42, subsection 3, made a proviso, which in a way allow for discrimination. So meaning that it has laid a precedent that it is not absolute. There could be reasons upon which discrimination can occur. And it talks about armed forces. it talks about police. Now, so one of the things that we saw recently about the police is a manifestation of what that Section 42, subsection 3 says. When they said a woman has to take, if she gets pregnant as a police officer, she'll be fired. So, because it allows police to make its own regulation. Yeah. So it allows the police to make its regulation in a way that could amount to discrimination. So my point is that, so the argument about Section 42 is also not very valid, especially for a country that has signed the African Charter on Human and People's Rights. The Protocol on the Rights of Women, Nigeria was one of those who pushed for it, and it talks clearly about the issue of equality. So my point is that within the Constitution, the issue of equality before the law is embedded in it. The issue of equality and social justice. Even our motto talks about social justice as a country. So we can't then be selective in our arguments around the issue of discrimination. So for me, you know, the most painful was also when you sit down and you watch what happened yesterday. The disdain and the fact that it was obvious that we don't have people in the House who actually understood the issue, not only gender issues. The House of Rep, for example, the Speaker had to explain every time. You would have expected that people have read this. And you would have also expected that ideologically, if we belong to a particular political party, we can have a block. You know, we didn't see all that happen, even on all issues. You know, even on a whole lot of other issues. So it was obvious that people were just being spontaneous, you know, making some of these issues, you know, as they were coming. And that was why the women issue actually suffered, because they didn't even see it as a priority. And you can see that everybody laughing, you know, shouting nay, you know, and all of that. And for us, that's the issue. So the point is that we've negotiated. The First Lady was there to be part of that negotiation. The Second Lady was there. The Honorable Minister was there. Civil society have met with them. We have met with the Conference of Speakers. We have met with everyone. So the only language that they would understand is the language that we will begin today.
Well, we'll come to that language shortly. But let me ask you, I mean, Honorable, I've put you on the spot with regards to where you voted, and rightly so, too, because this is a matter that has to do with our Constitution. And as you rightly said, I mean, as Mr. Kennedy rightly pointed out, this is about the ideas, the fundamentals of our country. If there was a creed, this is what our country would recite as its creed. Yes, there's a national anthem, there's a pledge, but this is the operating, let's say, the engine room of where everything else derives from. Yeah. So I just want to ask you, from what you can see, what was the general idea? What was the overarching idea? What do you think that this particular constitution amendment was trying to achieve? I do not know if you have a perspective on that.
Well, the amendment seeks to, for me, is to change the tide. We had several issues, burning issues that has to do with governance, issues of devolution of powers, issues that has to do with strengthening some institutions, issues that has to do with resource control, and some of these things that are actually supposed to come up due to devolution of powers. A lot of that did not come apart from the local government, which got their part. Then again, the judiciary, the independence of the judiciary, the state assembly, and some other agencies. So for me, it's trying to shape a future that everybody's yearning for. Yes, we can't get everything right at the same time. The issue of women, a lot of us believe that, yes, women should be given their place. They are very active when it comes to political participation. But when you take women, this is a special seat for women, and you never, the bill never said that the women will not contest in the other ones. Now, the woman will come and contest in the existing ones, but you have special seats for them. Again, they could not, in their negotiation, they could not get the National Assembly to create fresh constituencies or fresh senatorial seats. So where are they really going to represent? They'll be floating, because they'll just say the women sit for women. So I think
they couldn't get the National Assembly, as if it's something hanging in the air. You mean they couldn't get their male colleagues to agree
it's not about
creating special constituencies?
Because they met. There was this interaction, there's this engagement, but the engagement ought to have been total. If they had created fresh constituencies, yes, you know this person, the women are representing this, but now let's assume in a state that you're bringing about 3 women for House of Reps and a senator, which constituency are they going to be representing? Are they going to be floating out there? So there are so many issues that are unresolved. And yesterday, I must give it to the Speaker. He did his best, even in our private executive session. He talked. He tried to explain. But you see, we are dealing with 360 members. There's no way everybody is going to, no matter what you say, no matter the picture you're going to paint.
I mean,
so there's no way. And we needed 240 to pass every bill.
It was not a narrow. It wasn't a narrow. It wasn't a narrow loss.
Yes.
It was a very wide. And I think for some people, they actually say that the senators did better than the House. It was seen that somehow the gospel is beginning to sink in the Senate. Yes, still some resistance, but there's a higher thinking, it will seem, in that regard that we saw in the House.
Now, you are talking about 109 to 360. So you should look at the percentage.
Looking at the percentage and the margins.
Look at the percentage and the measure, exactly. So something has been done. It has come up now. It failed this time. Maybe next time it could be pushed.
I do not want to actually dwell. I want to dwell on it, but I do not want to dwell too much because there are other things that And I was talking about the ideas. I mean, the idea behind this. You were talking about. You spoke on the issue of resource control. You spoke on the issue of devolution of powers, which are critical issues. One of the things which was missing, which didn't come up for consideration as well, because it wasn't a clause amongst the 68, is the issue of state police. Was it an oversight?
No, the state police was part of the consideration and it failed at our level when we were trying to say, okay, we voted too. State police was part of it, but it failed because some persons believe that governors are going to use it to their advantage and it failed. But for me, I was for state police, but it failed. It's parliament. The minority will have their say, majority will also have their way. So many of these issues, thematic areas that were really considered, they failed because of our voting, and we just have to let them go. Next time, we'll try again, too.
Let me flip
For me, as somebody from the South-South, I should be very happy if we get the fiscal control of what we have. Fiscal federalism, where we have to take control of what we have, what we generate, there'll be competition among states. For me, I wanted that, but it failed, and we just have to let it go. We wanted more from 13% derivation to about 25%. It failed. So everybody have to lick their wound and wait for another day to continue.
Let's flip this to Lagos. I know my colleague Ayo has questions. Ayo.
Oh, thank you, Mark. Well, let me begin with Mr. Candidate Johnson. Permit me to go back to one of those issues that you mentioned earlier, especially concerning the women and all of that. How significantly, in your opinion, do you think this process, and maybe even the Constitution in its entirety, factor in the cultural influence on our polity?
I'm not sure I understand the question, but I think I will attempt to interpret it. I think that, you're looking for ideas as foundation, and you're right to look for some perspective on our cultural outlook in a constitutional document. A constitution, after all, is not just a legal document, it's a social and a political contract. It reflects what people believe. This is why I speak about fundamental ideas. If you should find in the Constitution a reflection of what people's idea is about who they are, about the rights within their system, and this is what you try to activate in the Constitution. I think that in respect of our Constitution, it's quite clear that it has not benefited from calm and careful deliberation. You can go into the history of our Constitution and you can see, if you analyze the Constitution, you can extract some of the ideas that the people who made it were trying to reflect. The power of the state is more important than the structure of the Constitution, the structure of the community, and even the rights that are guaranteed by the Constitution. It's clear that in a deliberative body like the National Assembly, you expect them to be able to calmly reflect on these ideas and attempt to find a way to implement them across the board in the provisions of the Constitution. I think that you didn't see that yesterday in the rowdy session. I find that when men gather in the club-like atmosphere of the National Assembly, which is majority men, notwithstanding the fact that the majority of Nigerians are women, and they tend to infuse the atmosphere with a frivolity and a shallowness, which doesn't allow them to reflect on these things. So back to your question, if you look at what is the culture of Nigeria, does Nigeria recognize the rights of women? That is, I think that Nigerians in their basic cultural understanding do so, but the National Assembly has not reflected this.
Which is the reason for that question. But if the ground norm does not factor in the cultural influence that guides some of our decisions, maybe that is where the issue began from, because Madam mentioned earlier the patriarchal nature of our society. So I'm wondering if, in your own opinion, that patriarchal nature was factored in before the voting or even some of the things that Nigeria signs into, which are supposed to reflect in our constitution, especially concerning this, the affirmative action for women. Do you think our constitution factored in the patriarchal nature of our society in the constitution, especially concerning this affirmative action for women?
Yeah, I get the point now. You know, patriarchy is a dominating idea in our country. Many people in power consider instinctively, reflectively, or even without speaking it, that there is some dominance of men. If you look at the language that is used by members of the National Assembly, even the gentleman who is with us here, the honorable member, he speaks about negotiating, about giving people things. You know, we're talking about rights. Rights are things that belong to a person by virtue of their being a person. If you're negotiating about recognizing rights within the Constitution, then fundamentally your social and political contract is shaky. These are rights. I do not accept that any idea of patriarchy or any cultural domination of the social space by men negates the fundamental right of women. I believe that equality is a fundamental of all human society. We tackle this question in regard to racism and Black people. We tackle it with regard to children, people with disability, and especially with women. You know, democracy is an ideology. That ideology is not just about numbers, it's about rights. You cannot organize a democracy by imposing the tyranny of the majority. The fact that the majority can control a space, if they do not recognize the rights of those who are in that space, they cannot sustain the democratic idea. Now, these are rational progressions that we must go through to reach the things we want to do. If you do not accept that women have equal rights, then if you not accept that the majority of your population is entitled to the same rights as you who are controlling the levers of political power, then you have infected your political space and your democracy with a poison from which we may not be able to recover from. I think that we should change. We get lost in the weeds. We need to identify fundamental ideas. What are we talking about? We're talking about human rights. We're talking about the equality of people within this space. We're talking about representation of people. And back to the question of quotas and putting spaces in. If the political process does not produce a National Assembly that looks like Nigeria, then we have to do something as other countries have done to be sure that we do so. Why? Because it is a right of those people to be represented in the political space and the political argument.
Which then begs the question that some people have raised before. Maybe it shouldn't be this National Assembly performing this process. Perhaps the reason also why some people are saying, maybe if we got a new constitution created by a completely new set of people in the Sovereign National Conference, it will make a difference. But more on that when we return from this break. Please stay with us. Certainly interested in several of those issues, and I'm almost certain that this conversation is not going to end today or anytime soon. But let me take this conversation to Dr. Akiode Afolabi in our Abuja studio. Well, you heard Mr. Candidate Johnson speaking largely about the influence of culture or a lack of influence of culture in the constitution review process, considerations in our polity, in the National Assembly, and all of that. For you, how significantly do you think it affected the process?
Well, let me first make a clarification, because I think the question you asked him is whether the Constitution has that kind of infusion. I would say that the way the Constitution is made, if you look at the rationale behind some of the text in the Constitution, those issues have been settled. The Constitution was also talking about equality, talking about social justice, talking about issues of culture and what have you. So in a way, the Constitution itself, it's not preaching patriarchy. Yes, I agree that the makers of the Constitution to a large extent, and that's why we are discussing issues of indigenship, because you would assume that some of these issues are given. And of course we have also argued that those who made the 1999 Constitution were majorly men, so they didn't see some of the issues, and that's why between 1999 and 2022 we kept talking about the issue of citizenship, we kept talking about the issue of indigenship, the issue of affirmative action, all the issues listed, because those issues were, if you look at even in terms of language, the language of the Constitution does also not reflect, that cultural understanding of the values of equality, all through the Constitution. The only place where the word woman or she was used were areas where the Constitution discriminated against the women, and the girl child. So the point that, patriarchy plays a big role, in our existence is well made. But what I would say is that Nigeria is not an island on its own. So the men in Nigeria are not different from the men in Ghana or in Kenya or in Rwanda or in Tanzania. So, but for those other countries, they have gotten to the level where they realize that the value of equality is very critical. And you can see that reflected in their constitutional processes and in the constitution making itself. Rwanda has adopted a whole lot of other things beyond quota in affirmative action and all of that. And today we have more women, controlling Rwanda, having power in Rwanda. And it's better for them, So we have in other countries also. So my point is that recently, even in Kenya, the gender rule was included in their constitution. So why is it so difficult for Nigeria since 1999 till 2022? We're still discussing this. And I bet that was why the women in the National Assembly went to this argument of 101 seats. Then they got there. Then they started again to say, oh, you want to be the super senator or you want to be the super member of the House of Rep. And we said, okay, if that is the problem. So it's a matter of insecurity. If that is the problem, okay, so let them come as women constituency. Still yet, we didn't get... So there's this whole thing of lack of understanding of the benefit of gender equality to nation building. And if we don't get that right, it becomes very difficult for Nigeria as a country to even achieve the aspiration that is set, by the forefathers in this country. And I think that is the conversation. They should understand that gender equality, it's about development of the nation, it's about nation building, it's about, and just as Candidate Johnson said, it's about the society allowing for representation, for voice of people who constitute majority of the people in the country. So, so what happened yesterday was actually a total disgrace and was a sign of insecurity. Women have done everything that they can do in terms of negotiation. So what that is also telling us is that we need to change our strategy and deal with this issue the way it comes.
Well, we certainly wait for that strategy, madam, but just to be clear, we also know that women are occupying the private sector more and more. Just to be clear, as you can see, you and I, we're wearing certain colors that are the same, so some of us are on your side. But let me take this question to Honorable Iwakwa. There is an aspect of this process that talked about the correctional facilities being on the concurrent list now. It's interesting that is there when the state police didn't even come on the list at all. So I'm wondering, can you give us some perspective? How is that expected to work when the states now can legislate on correctional facilities, but they can't legislate on those who will enforce the law that will make the correctional facilities effective for them?
Well, we all know what the situation of our correctional centers are in this country. We know, we are all aware of the overcrowded correctional centers, and most of these persons going to go to prison courtesy of state courts. So we don't see anything wrong in the state courts adjudicating on the matter and taking a decision, and this person is going to state correctional centers. And that can actually increase the level of community service that can be rendered, and instead of people going to prison most times, they should actually go to the, community assignment, community punishment for some time, change them, take them to places where those ones that are still trainable, train them and bring them back to society as reformed persons. So that's our thinking, and I think there's nothing wrong with it.
All right, well, we'll leave that for now. Let me go back to Mr. Candide Johnson. It's concerning this autonomy for local government councils and the judiciary at the state levels and all of that. I don't know. I've asked this question before, so I'm going to ask it again. In the Constitution, there are certain responsibilities that belong to local governments, specifically, that the states have kind of usurped, if I can use that term. So how significantly will this adjustment that's been made by the National Assembly, how significantly will it affect things when what we had before was equally significant? I remember in the Third Republic, we had a situation where local governments were quite powerful. Even in the First Republic, we had that, so where the local governments were very, very powerful. So it's not because the Constitution didn't recognize, this 1999 Constitution that is being amended, didn't recognize the role of local government administrations, but we just seem to have been operating in breach. So how significantly will this one change anything?
You know, the effectiveness of any written prescription depends on those who will implement it. You can write whatever you want in a party constitution, in a national constitution. If those who operate it do not believe in the ideas that are expressed in their words, they will render them null and void. And this is the problem that you've identified with previous prescriptions about local government. It's quite clear that the Constitution pretends many things. The Constitution speaks about autonomy of local governments. It speaks about independence of the judiciary. It speaks about separation of power. It speaks to a large extent about rights of individuals. But it is quite clear to me that if one was to extract a dominant ideology in the operation of our Constitution, it is about the concentration of power in the hands of a powerful few. This is the most fundamental idea of those who operate our Constitution. They did not believe in the democratic rights of individual Nigerians. They did not believe in a free and open political system. They do not believe in the rule of law. They do not believe in the rights of women and children and people living with disabilities. They believe that the purpose of our constitutional arrangements, regardless of what we write, is to concentrate power so that those who hold the levers of power can extract the best value from our nation, regardless of those whom they govern. You know, this may seem harsh, and it's difficult to fault it when you look at the process in the National Assembly yesterday, which was, this is the process in a allegedly deliberative body, and we saw no deliberation. There was no debate, there was no analysis, nobody spoke about the pros and cons of these ideas. They put it to the vote as if we were in a bar, as far as I'm concerned. I mean, with great respect to the speaker, I noticed that he reflected his own high socialization to lead that body in a way that they would calmly reflect on the fundamental things that they were doing. But in the chaos, it then became, you know, people throwing their hands about the place. There was no deliberation in what is meant to be the foremost deliberative body in our nation. So what happens in the midst of all this noise and confusion is that the silent idea that political arrangements in Nigeria are about confining power to the hands of an unrepresentative minority and allowing them to hold us bound while they extract the greatest value for themselves. That is the overarching idea of our political arrangement. And this is what we're seeing played out. So we write these things in the Constitution, and we can't have no guarantee that those who are operating the Constitution will move to effect them. And this brings me to what I think is the most important thing. Women have the numbers. Youth have the numbers. They are ill-served by the present political arrangements. And what they need to do is to take political power from those who have sat on their necks for this period of time.
Is there anything in the Constitution or even in our political set up right now that you think can give them that oomph to do what you've proposed?
Well, they have to believe. I know that one of the biggest problems we have about participation in the political space is lack of confidence in the processes in the election. People don't believe in the elections. Low voter turnout is a reflection not only on lack of confidence in the electoral process in our democracy, but in the legitimacy of the government that it produces. We have to create legitimacy for our government by taking control of our government. So whatever process is available to us, the only process that is available right now is participation by elections, by registering to vote, by turning out. You know, if 10 people turn up at a polling unit when 9,000 people are registered, it's very easy for some criminal to write the result. If 2,000 people turn up, it's less easy for him to do so. If less people register than have a right to vote, then there's less of the space is easier to manage by those who have a malign intention in that political space. The fact is that the only way to secure democracy is to use your hands and your feet and to participate. You can't give up. If you give up, then you surrender exactly to this mysterious group of people who believe that men are superior to women. You know, I remember they said in America that a black man was worth a third of a white man. We all recognize that to be such a revolting and offensive idea that the world across the world will reject it. What we see in the treatment of women in their participation in the political process, despite the fact that they're the majority of voters and that they're the majority of the population, is that the men who control the levers of power in Nigeria do not believe that a single woman is up to 1/2 of a man, if that. And that is a disgrace.
Well, just one question for you before we go back to Abuja. Speak to the issues concerning, autonomy for the judiciary in the states as well. You've spoken about the fact that some people, when they have power, they just want to use it the way they feel should be used. Is there anything in this constitution, as far as you're concerned, even in this process or in the reviews being made, to compel compliance with the law or the constitution by the governors or any of these people that you have spoken about?
Well, again, when you write a provision, you can make it what you want. One of the aphorisms of law is that the constitution is what the judges say it is. The idea of separation of power is a fundamental to our constitution, which means that every branch has power within its constitutional remit. The remit of the judges is to tell us what the law says and what it means, and they should interpret it in the context of our democratic aspirations. So when you talk about autonomy, there are multiple levers within even the existing legal provisions for the judges if they are minded to respond in a rational, progressive, and effective way to achieve many of these objectives. Because whatever you write, it has to be interpreted. What does the Constitution mean? What does this law mean? This is the job of the judges. But even in the judiciary, you will find that it is so, the philosophy is so diffused, so diluted by political interference, by the variety of rights, by inadequacy of quality sometimes with the judges who are appointed to the high and the higher benches, that they cannot themselves rationalize and express a rational philosophy of judging. The absence of that is also a defect of our constitutional and political arrangement.
Well, I do know that, for many years now, there have been talks around restructuring, there have been talks around true federalism. Honorable Benny Bakba, you talked about how resource control did not pass through, getting even more derivation, more for the derivation formula also did not sail through. There have been talks about how this national, not just this National Assembly, the National Assembly as constituted, as constructed, is not capable of making the shift that we truly need as a people. I know that you're a member, but having been there now a few years, do you think that the people who push this idea have a point?
Yes, before I go to that, let me just correct an impression which the SAN posited. Yesterday was not a day for debates on any of those bills. Debates normally come up at the second reading of a bill where the general principle for and against are discussed. You don't canvass yesterday. You can only go for an amendment. It's a report of a bill that is referred to the Constitution Amendment Committee. So there was no, yesterday was not actually a date for debate. But where people seem not to understand, Mr. Speaker and the Deputy Speaker took time to explain. It's expected that you have the report. We had reports for about a week now before yesterday, so that we can go through it and probably understand. Everybody are not lucky to be part of the amendment. So just to put that in.
Okay, just quickly, the issues, it also means that the issues which did not pass first reading, which is what was happening yesterday, the votes yesterday, will not come up for debate. Isn't that correct? It will not come. No, there's always, first reading is just mentioned. That's what I'm saying. So second reading is as a result of the votes, if that clause or bill did not sail through yesterday, it's not going to come up for debate, is it? No, not yesterday. Everything that came up yesterday had been debated. That because it has gone through the first, second reading, referred to the committee, which is the Special Constitutional Amendment Committee. Okay. Then now they brought their report. Then bringing the report is because it's a constitutional amendment. It doesn't just come to the House. It goes back. That is why you have the regional meeting that they did. Then the interaction, the engagement with civil society and other. Then we now went in for another set of voting internally. A lot of these bills failed there. So what came out now is a product of the joint sitting of the Senate, the House of Reps, that they all agreed on. That was what came out. So there was no, yesterday was not for debate, but you can come up with an amendment if you're not privy to the previous activities. You can come up with an amendment, which we did yesterday. There were a few amendments here and there, but yesterday was not really a date for debate. So there will be no further debate on this? No, for now, no debate. It goes to the State Houses of Assembly. If we're able to secure 2/3 of it, well, let's see. A lot to still play out. So let me clarify this, and this is for the benefit of our viewers. Yeah. Now that you have the House has voted, the Senate has voted. Usually we know that there's some harmonization, but we understand that in this situation, if it did not pass, if a particular clause or bill did not pass in both houses, that clause does not sail through to the states. Is that not correct? It does not sail through. Okay. Yeah. So back to the question which I asked you. As per the National Assembly being how it is constructed, is it really capable of making, because I think that at the end of the day, what we really want to do is move our country forward. Yes. Is it really capable of moving the country forward from where it currently is? I'm looking at, not just looking at this particular National Assembly and what happened yesterday, but taking a look at what has happened with other constitution amendment processes. Well, yes, the National Assembly have the requisite, the Constitution has given them the responsibility, and I'm sure they are very, very capable. They are other, apart from, I think we should not just throw the baby and the bathwater away at all times. The National Assembly have been, risen up to certain occasion most times. What about, some days ago, Mr. President signed the Electoral Act. We had far-reaching, thank God he said not just this one. You have a National Assembly that was able to override the President veto to bring the NDDC board on, NDDC to stay. You have other bills that has actually worked for Nigeria, but if for once the vote for women did not sail through, it's something that is more desired. We wanted it. People wanted it. People crave for it, but it didn't sail through. We have to. Honourable, I'll be very honest with you. When you miss one, the question I asked you, when you miss one, wait for the other one, another opportunity to do it. The question I asked you, it doesn't have to do with women. I mean, yes, that is a part of it. Yeah. But when I ask about it is true that when we move forward, we should be able to carry everybody along, especially if we consider that women are at least 50% of the population, and everybody should be carried along, and we should pave a path for the girls who will be born into this country to say that we recognize that you're equals. And that's fundamental. But in terms of moving the country forward, in terms of devolution of powers, in terms of restructuring, which is something that people from your region have also canvassed, resource control, this is some of the things which also border on the issue of justice. Do you think that the National Assembly, as is constituted, I know that you're a member. It might be difficult to speak against it. But if you were to take a critical look at it, would you say that the National Assembly, as constituted, is capable of making the sort of decisions which will actually make a shift in the needle which we have been trying to push for a while?
Well, yes, I agree with you. Looking at the Constitution, the way it is now, the National Assembly is constituted, we have certain regions that have more members. When it comes to voting, that's why the issue of minority have their say, majority have their way will always be there. I don't see how that can be reconstructed, how we need to change it. Some of the constituencies were, at a point, some of the constituencies were deleted from the system, and now you see motions coming up, to bring up social constituency that was subsumed without any notice. So the way it is considered is going to be very, very difficult unless it's something of national interest that affects everybody. But if it's something that is regional, it's going to be very, very difficult.
Let me come to you, Ms. Akiode. You have spoken of what is going to happen today. Can you speak a little more to that? And what do you hope to achieve with the action which the groups are going to be taking? Because some people will say that's crying over spilled milk. The decision has already been taken.
Well, we don't believe that that decision is final, because we think Constitution should reflect the aspiration of the people. And so what we're saying today is that as far as that conversation yesterday, when it didn't really reflect the aspiration of the Nigerian people, particularly Nigerian women. And so what we're doing this morning is first to insist on having an emergency meeting with the leadership of the House to rediscuss this issue. It might have not happened before, maybe because we never also tried this before. But we believe that as a people, we should have a right of audience. We should have a right to renegotiate whatever decision has been made at that point. Now, we saw a lot of things happen yesterday. There were amendments made, so meaning that it's not probably cast in stones. So we want to insist as Nigerians that they should reconsider some of these discussions. We can't live in a country where we are not seen as citizens, where we don't have equal citizenship, we don't have equal leadership, we cannot speak, we cannot breathe, the system is down. We can't continue in that kind of country. So meaning that we are getting to a stage in this country where we have to redefine the existence of women, whether we're actually part of the country or we need to have our own country. And that's the discussion we want to have this morning.
Have our own country. I mean, how feasible is that?
Yeah.
I mean, we're still wives in homes, and there are husbands in our homes. So to speak, our children and the National Assembly, they are also populating the different, leadership positions. It's sad that it's not reflected.
But it's not reflecting that way.
Yeah.
It's not reflecting in that way. We're not seen as co-owners of this country. That's what it means. The Constitution is the grand norm. It's the most fundamental thing to anyone. So if the Constitution cannot guarantee, so all the work that we're doing as civil society, it's as good as we're not really doing anything.
So what's going to happen today at the National Assembly?
So we're going to occupy the National Assembly. Simple.
What do you mean by occupy the National Assembly?
We will be there. We're sleeping there. Let them come out and speak with us. If they don't, we are there with our mats, with our stoves, with our pots. They are already there this morning. And this is just the warning. We would insist on having a conversation. We need to have this conversation.
Even if women win the battle here, assuming there is some reversal, assuming there is some reconsideration and it eventually sails through, just assuming, what is going to happen at the state houses of assembly?
We've started that conversation too. We have met with the speakers, and we have grassroots women. We have women across the country. So we thought we would get here, better. So we already had a plan and a strategy for that. So we have network across the country.
Okay, well, we'll see how that eventually goes. I understand that perhaps would there be harmonization of what has happened what happened on the floor of the National Assembly yesterday and will continue today? Will there be harmonization? This is a quick one to you.
As far as the process is concerned, by the functions of the Constitution and the rules of our House, we are done.
Okay.
ADOM, and it's just for the committee leadership to put it together. And
that's the harmonization, isn't that?
Whatever failed at the Senate level has failed. Whatever failed at the House level has failed.
But if you failed in the Senate and passed in the House?
It has failed.
Okay.
It takes two to tango.
We'll see how it eventually, goes down. Maybe there will be some amendment to these rules. Maybe there will be a review. We do not know. But today is another day to look out for. We know that the voting process wasn't completely done yesterday as it stirred the waters. And I think it's a notice that we all should be interested in what happens in the chambers of the National Assembly. After all, they're there to represent their constituencies, and naturally, we all come from one constituency or another. But let us see how matters eventually pan out when eventually it goes down today. We have to thank our guests for coming in this morning. Mr. Yemi Kandide Johnson, a senior advocate of Nigeria, joining us via Zoom. Thank you so much for coming on the program this morning.
Pleasure.
We also had here with us in our studios Honorable Benny Bakba, who is a member representing Ethiopia Federal Constituency. Thank you for not being afraid to express your views here this morning. And of course, my dear sister, Dr. Abiola Akiode Afolabi, who is the convener Feminist Manifesto. Thank you so much for coming on as well.
It's a pleasure.
Well, that's how we leave this segment. We'll be back shortly to also take a look at another issue which affects the nation's youth this time around. Please stay with us.
Our university lecturers here deserve good pay. The worker is due his wages. So if we compare with what obtains in other climes and are not adequately remunerated, nothing stops government from, within the lean resources that we have, do some compensation raise and make them happy. So we are not opposed to that, but there's a process, like I explained to them. The process is that the committee, internal committee in the Ministry of Education, headed by chair of pro-chancellors, will submit their report, and the report will be looked at by the officials of the ministry in conjunction with the National Salaries, Incomes and Wages Commission, so that they make sure that none of the allowances so proposed runs counter to government extant fixtures. Say, example, if you are talking about per diem for university lecturers, you will not make it different or be above what is in the Eastern Circle.
These issues we are discussing, we can resolve it in 1 week. If these countries have to declare emergency education because of what we are seeing today, we will solve this problem in less than 3 days. But the strike is going to 3 days, and we are still talking. Nigerians want to see action. The students want to see action. My members want to see action. I also believe the general public want to see action. And I believe this can be done easily if the leadership of this country believe that in education, if they believe that there are crises in Nigerian education, primary, secondary, university, if they believe that we are losing so much money, we are losing heavy quantum of money to other countries because we need to fund our education.
Is definitely, the issue is definitely something still on the front burner. An update on the FG ASUU face-off, of course, what you have seen so far, the Minister of Labour and Employment has spoken, and ASUU has also spoken on their final position. Let's have some conversation with one of the state coordinators of ASUU, the zonal coordinator of ASUU Lagos Zone, Comrade Adelaja Odukoya, joins us this morning virtually. Thanks for joining us today.
Thank you so much. Good morning.
Yeah, we've been speaking most certainly about the issue, the space where the federal, the national body of ASUU has been speaking. First of all, what's your own take? How are the states addressing or approaching the same issue?
Thank you so much. From what we have just seen from the reaction of the national president, it is regrettable to note that there has not been the kind of seriousness we expect that the federal government with which the federal government will approach this matter. Of course, without belaboring the matter, we all know this has been on since 2009. We know we have signed several memorandum of understanding, but the latest one was just, to cut the long story short, when we suspended our strike in 2020, we had a timeline and everything was supposed to have been done within 3 months. But as you speak, it's unfortunate we have to call our members out and to go on strike before even the federal government start talking again. So, and what the last 2 meetings, okay, let me talk about the meeting before the last one yesterday, because I've not been properly briefed about what happened yesterday. But I have no reason to believe that it was different from the previous one. What we are still been having a promised note from the government, which to us is actually very disappointing. And like the president said, for us in ASUU, we have gone past the stages, the stage of memorandum of understanding, memorandum of action, all these promises, we'll do this, we'll do that, and statement of intention. What our members want now, simplicity, is action. And this is coming against the background that our members are terribly overworked. Our members are the worst paid academics you find, even when we talk about the African average. It's so unfortunate that even the Minister of Labour is talking about, if you look at the process if you look at what is happening in other places, and we discover they are underpaid, we are not averse to making the adjustment and things like that. That's actually an unfortunate statement. Way back 2009, there was a general survey, and we came to the African average, and it was discovered then that Nigerian scholars, Nigerian academics, our members are even being paid below the African average. So to now talk that and that was when even the exchange rate was still even better. So, and to even talk about process, what process? As if there were no processes. Negotiation is a process. There was the process is collective bargaining. This was supposed to have been done in 2012, every 3 years as per the 2009 agreement. Invariably, we started. It took Babalaki so much years to frustrate the whole process. To cut a long story short, that process was concluded in May last year. As we speak, nothing has been done. And we are talking about, I told them there is a process as if we don't know, as if it has not been done. Then again, there was equally this talk about what they are proposing. There was no proposal. It make it look as if it was a one-man show. It was ASUU suggesting this one will get. It was a process of collective bargaining. They had all their representatives there. The federal government was represented. The Labour Ministry, the NUC, Ministry of Education, Revenue, Mobilization, everybody that had one thing to do with the whole process, they were all there. It was a process of negotiations. So this idea about what they proposed, it was whatever is on the document they have before them was a process of negotiation. So what comes to me from what it's saying is that, you see what has been done in the past and that was concluded in May 2021, what is saying in essence that is going to be jettisoned, and they are going to start a new process whereby of course there's a new chairman of the federal negotiation team now. will now look into it and start. So they are the one delaying the process. They are the one frustrating the process. There was a process we have gone to. They were aware that we have been underpaid way back in 2009. So what are we talking about? So for me, it's just unfortunate that the government is reacting this way, and Nigeria should hold the government responsible for what is happening to Nigerian education, particularly the university education in this country. Thank you.
Well, one is most certainly concerned, for which reason we have been at this, raising the issues just to ensure that, you know, all sides are covered and people know exactly what is going on and if there is any way that they can intervene. But then there is also that thorny issue that the students themselves raised, and that is how it affects the students directly. Every time this happens, it is the students that suffer the most. They lose age, they lose time, they lose investments, they lose the rents and all of that they put into some of the, school, the apartments that they have to get and all of that. So is this something that that's also of concern to ASUU?
Yeah, thank you so much. Certainly. It's actually, you see, each time we have our strike, we're forced to have these strikes, and we ended up agreeing to this memorandum of actions, memorandum of understanding that we know from experience. We are no fools. We know from experience that government, even at the moment they were signing, from their antecedent, more often than not, they are not ready to. Or we have to come back to even go to another strike to make sure that they do what they should do, what they have willingly entered into. But we do that quite often than not, and every time, because we are concerned about the situation, about the students. Because you see, we are parents too. And unlike the politicians, unlike the top government officials, we can equally not afford to send our kids abroad. Our own kids too are in the same university. But unlike the average students and average parent that are out there that is only bothered about the paper certificate, we are bothered about the quality. Because when you talk about university education, you're talking about global education. You are talking about universal content. You are talking about education that will make you competitive anywhere in the world. And that's why you see all this global ranking. So it's unfortunate that some people, most people are only just bothered about, let the university move on. Open the university, get the students out. No, for us, it's more than that. So we're bothered about the student because we are lecturers, we are parents, we have our own kids there too. And more importantly, it equally affects us. We can equally not do our own trade. We can't move around. When I talk about move around, I'm talking about going for conferences, doing our researches and things like that. So it's unfortunate, and that's why we say we should all jointly hold the government responsible.
Okay.
And
well,
the government do
the students themselves have also, called for, a role in this ASUU struggle, if I can use the term like that. In this video that you can see on the screen right now, they were in the office of the Minister of Education saying they want to be a part of the process as well. And the minister agreed that, maybe that part hasn't been looked at, hadn't ever been considered. I'm wondering, since you sit in the class with the students, and they know some of the pressures that you are going through to get them the kind of education that you decide that you give them. How is ASUU taking on board the part of students being a part of the process with ASUU to get this whole academic tertiary education on the front burner and better?
Thank you so much. It's, for me, a welcome development because for some of us, as students, the battle ASUU is fighting today, we were involved. There was a synergy between the students' union movement, the labor movement, and when I talk about the labor movement, I'm talking about NLC, the civil society, and ASUU itself, such that we were all fighting for better condition in the university system and also the larger society. Because if you fight for just the university system and you're not bothered about what happened in the society, it will come back to haunt you. So, but something happened along the way our students became something else. They were no longer focused about what is happening in the university system, and ASUU was left and has been left to be the only person struggling for it. So, as an important stakeholder in the university system, the students are welcome to the board, on board, to be part of the whole process, to be part of this struggle, to be part of the process that will make the government to do the needful, whichever way possible. So for me, it's a welcome development. And I think and for ASUU, it's not just about students.
Comrade,
Even
just a second.
Religious leaders have been involved, and we
they
welcome
can't
them.
be a
So why
part
not
of the
students?
process if they are not invited. Is ASUU going to invite the students' body to be a part of the process?
Yeah, you see, it is the government. They've made a minister, and there is a negotiation between ASUU and the minister. The government. It is the labor ministry. We can invite them. They are not member of our union. We can have consultation at an informal level to discuss. Yes, we have always been doing that. So,
TUC, for instance, comrade, just 1 second. TUC has made it clear that they are on the side of ASUU, especially when the students, decided to protest. They said that they are on the side of ASUU. Consequently, I'm pretty sure that they'll be interested in joining forces with ASUU, to get this done. The students have indicated their interest. Don't you think it's a fair idea for the students, for ASUU, who has a direct relationship with the students, to invite them to be a part of the process? It's not membership, per se, it's just a partnership for this process.
No, I've said that. I've said we are always, for example, if the news in the last 2 weeks, I think last week, you see the zone D of ASUU, that is those within the Lagos, Lagos, Ogun State ASUUs. They call them ASUU NASS Zone D. They had a press conference where they said they had a meeting with the Lagos zone, that's my zone there, of ASUU. And at the end of it, we discuss, and it's in the public domain. They released the discussion that we had a meaningful discussion and how to forge ahead. So that's what I'm saying. We are always discussing. We are partners. As a matter of fact, when we talk about scholars, students are part of the scholars. You understand? So that's what I'm saying. It is now for the government to invite them if they want them to be part of the process of negotiating this this settlement of this problem. But for us and our students, we are always engaging, and I've just given the example of the Zone D of NANS that had a meeting with ASUU Lagos Zone just last week, and it was in the media.
Okay. Well, comrade, I'm a little concerned about something, and when I talk about these things, it's always about the future. The students today who are in tertiary schools, universities, and the rest of them, some of them will become lecturers in another 10, 15, 20 years from now. By the way we are going about this, the process so far, the number of the kind of situation we have on our hands when government and ASUU are not on the same page. What for you are the concerns if this same set of students become lecturers and they have to go through the same thing that you're going through?
Yeah, it's actually the sad trajectory I was trying to paint the other time. As a student, I suffered this pain. And I have some of my colleagues there that even not 20 years, 5 years ago, when we were actually during the President Jonathan, they were students and they were complaining. But now they have joined on and they have seen what we're seeing. So the 20-year you are talking, yeah, it's so the tragedy would be if we stop doing what we are doing, if we don't collectively force government to actually do what it's supposed to do, to be responsible in terms of actually making sure our education generally is the way it should be. There might not be a university where those people you're talking about will be lecturers, because we all know the state of our public primary and secondary school now. That is the way our university will have gone, if not for this struggle that it seems most of us don't seem to understand. And again, people talk about the private university. The figures are there. Yes, they open every time, but again, even when you go and look at the statistics, how many percentage of the students are going there? And when they even finish there, where do they come to do their masters and things like that? So these are the issues. If the struggles If the struggle we are waging at the level of ASUU, other students and other stakeholders don't join us, I'm afraid 20 years down the line, those students may not have a university where they may be lecturers.
So are you saying then, sir, that this entire strike, this 1 month warning strike, it does look like it's going to be exhausted before we eventually see a call-off? And we don't even know if it's going to be extended. From what you can see, from the level of engagement that you can see, do you think it will be called off before, before it is exhausted?
I don't have all the facts of, for example, about the meeting that I don't even have the facts of what happened yesterday. I don't know what will happen with the 4 weeks I've done. Like the president said in that interview that was aired, these are things that could be settled within a week. So I don't want to be speculative in terms of saying what will happen after the 4 weeks. As of today, I made it clear the government have not actually done anything meaningful to actually give hope that this strike will not be rolled over. But again, 1 week, like the president said, is enough to do the miracle and things like that. The facts are there. There are no new things. It's just for the government to do the way they attend to their own personal things that personally favors them. If they face education that way, and this issue to be resolved. So until the end of that 4 weeks, I will not be in a position to say what will happen.
So you do believe that the 4 weeks might be exhausted before we see a call-off?
I've not said that. I've said I don't have all the facts and I can't predict the future. It's possible. What is certain is that if the needful have not been done, if government have not done the needful, it will be rolled over. But it's possible within the time left, that because we still have more than a week, and the government have made it clear that within a week all this thing can be fixed. So if it is fixed within 1 week or the next 1 week, why roll over? There will be no basis to roll over. So that's what I'm saying. It is difficult for me to say this is what will happen until we assess what happened at the end of the 4 weeks or before the end of the 4 weeks.
Can you tell us in very clear terms what the take homes now, what you think really needs to be done in the 1 week? We know that, the list of things that need to be done are quite a lot in general from the 2009 agreement. But what are some of the basics that ASUU is asking for before going back?
Thank you very much. And I will be very honest and frank with you. The signing and implementation of the 2009 renegotiated agreement, that this with our condition of service, that is non-negotiable for our members. I repeat, the signing and implementation of the 2009 renegotiated agreement, that this with the condition of service of members is non-negotiable. And two, the immediate deployment of UTAS in replacement of the obnoxious, oppressive, and exploitative IPPIS that even government agencies, the Auditor General of the Federation, have shown clearly how it has actually encouraged corruption rather than actually stopping it. Those two things are non-negotiable for our members. And that could be done within the next 1 week if they are actually serious about it.
Well, we have to thank you, comrade, for being a part of this conversation this morning, and we can only hope for the best. So, so many other questions to ask you, but we're completely out of time. Comrade Adelaja Odukoya is Zonal Coordinator, ASUU Lagos Zone. Thank you for joining us this morning.
Thank you so much, channels, and thank you. God bless.
All right, well, I don't know if we have those messages coming already. Yes, Professor Enakena begins with our universities, which is the vehicle for human capacity development and the source of economic development, must not be plundered by these shenanigans between ASUU and federal government. Our political leaders must intervene now to end this impasse.
Victor Owo says, one statement we have not stopped hearing is up NEPA. One scenario that is recurrent, ASUU strike. When will things change, really? This is really sad. That is why our students are trapped in the Ukraine-Russia crisis. We need to set our priorities right.
On this same issue, Law Alpha says the capacity and capabilities of Nigerian women, okay, that's talking about the constitutional review process, are visible and adequately appreciated in the Western countries. But here in Nigeria, the driving ambition of men to occupy political offices seems to douse the genuineness and talent of women.
Olagunju Oladele has this. The Constitution references "we the people" as having agreed on its provisions, whilst the people were never involved. No identity of the competitiveness interest. Oh, I believe this is no identity of the competitive interest of the people while directly exercising our sovereignty. The amendment is an unjust exercise.
Well, Festus says, sad that our legislators failed to see the need to have a diverse National Assembly, even when half of our population are women. We need adequate representation for women in our National Assembly now. It's essential to maximize the contribution of our women to make our country great.
We have a few on fuel scarcity. Olugbenga Boluwaji says fuel sells for between 270 naira to 300 naira in Ilesha, Osun State, except in Bovas, all with queues. So it looks like this queue thing is spreading. And Gang Philip says, in Lafia, Nasarawa State, I bought fuel at 215 naira per litre. You were asking people to send in their experiences, Ayo. Well, some of it you have now.
Absolutely. And this one from Dapko Banjo, we cannot benefit from high oil prices because we lack vision to invest in productivity other than subsidizing consumption. I hope we wake up one day as a country.
Well, I sincerely hope we do wake up one day. Well, if we're asleep, if you are asleep, please wake up. But as a country, as a whole, this sleeping giant, this slow giant, really does need to move faster than it's currently moving. And we hope that with the work that we do and the contributions which you also send, and, you know, in your collective spaces, that we will begin to see that move, however slight it might be. Thank you so much for watching this morning. Thank you for sending in your contributions. I'm Maokwe Ogun Yusuf.
And with the gender bills shut down, what next? More on that subsequent days? I don't know. I'm Ayo Makide. Have a wonderful day.